The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster Mai, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. We're open line through till 1, so text, email, call and WhatsApp, whatever's on your mind. Lots of stuff in the news today, including the story about the great gas price war in Ramsey. The Ramsey MHKs are weighing in on this. This is Mayfield residents that are getting charged more for their gas. The Treasury Minister, though, says he's optimistic will be some fluctuations. The CPI has fallen below 2% for the first time since 2021. The consumer inflation rate has dropped by 0.3% last month. It's fallen below 2% for the first time since 2021. The rate at which prices are rising now stands at 1.9%, with rent, driving lessons and preschool fees amongst the biggest movers. Anybody who sends children to nurseries will tell you that. Over the 12 months to 2024 October, postage, restaurants and hotels and wines and spirits saw year-on-year increases, while gas, oil and other fuels and petrol recorded average decreases of 15%. Dr. Allenson told Manx Radio he's pleased with the inflation remaining close to the Bank of England's 2% target, but expects some fluctuation and confirmed Treasury will continue to monitor the situation closely. As we come up to Christmas, I'm sure that's very welcome. David's first with us now. Hi, David.
Hi, Andy. I just want to talk about hitting a brick wall, and that's to do with people who are homeless or no fixed abode. Basically, at the weekend, I actually approached my MHK, which was Rob Collister, met him. We had a discussion, and John's agreed that because I can't get anywhere with these brick walls now with government and nobody returning calls. But now Rob Collister is going to take on the issue. He's going to be provided with all the information regarding John's story.
Well, the important thing is, let's, for new listeners, start here. This is John, who is homeless through no fault of his own. Circumstances have conspired. He is living in a vehicle, but he's got one room at the moment, you said last week. That's
right, costing £150 a week. So, as you can imagine, resources are very slim. He's going to the charities, and that's Gry up Broadway there. Really thanks to them and other people who have suggested different things where he can go to get a meal. And that's the saddest thing I'm pushing out there. So hopefully when Rob does some digging and asks the questions, he will get answers. And that's the saddest thing too.
But how long have you been banging on the door of the particular government department?
3-4 weeks now.
So they were told of this nearly a month ago and haven't even returned your call.
No. Well, it is a fact. I sat with John in a room a few Fridays ago when he said to him he's a bed blocker. Definitely said to him, because I was there, we're going to charge you 360 quid a day to be in hospital. And John's just said to me, I've had enough of this. He had 2 bags of stuff, got in my car, went to Onken, dropped him off. He wasn't living. People think he was living in my car. He wasn't. He was living in his own car. Crucified him for 2 weeks. He said, he rang me one. I ring him every day just to make sure that A, he's still there, and B, he's still happy, or we're getting somewhere, which gives him encouragement. I mean, the thing that I find really sad is when you ring a department up and you say who you are. I'm speaking on behalf of John. John confirmed that sitting in the meeting over the phone to the social worker, and here we are, months coming down the road now. Look at the weather this morning. I didn't want him to be in a car frozen. That's what I didn't want, you know. And David Ashford's, I listened to him on Thursday. I tried to get on, but I'll tell you a private story about that sometime when I talk to you. The pathway, to me, doesn't exist. If the pathway existed, why can't we get a copy of it?
Well, you would think also, I mean, John, let's face it, John isn't an extreme emergency, but he is urgent, bordering on emergency.
He could have been. You look at the scenarios we've been having lately. The fellow that was around the harbour, then was found in the harbour. Do you know what I mean? We don't want that, do we, on our tick list?
It sounds, I mean, the thing is, it sounds implausible, but again, almost unbelievable that nobody in government takes this seriously enough even to just return a telephone call and say what they're going to do.
Yeah. But I believe now, talking to Rob at the weekend there, and I chatted to him for about a good half an hour about the situation, filled him in totally. That will be all confirmed by email from me today, because John said over the weekend he was happy for Rob to take this cause on. Because the other thing in the future is, if he's not living anywhere, he doesn't have a constituency, does he?
True. No.
He doesn't have a political person. So at the end of the day, and I said to John over the weekend, probably a bit of tongue-in-cheek, is we're getting a new bishop. She'll be in an MLC. So I will approach her if nothing happens within a month or two and say to her, will she take on the cause for the Isle of Man when you live in here, and see what she says.
Okay, well, we wish you and also Rob Callister well with this, and let's get some progress. Crikey, it's Christmas of all times of the year for this to happen.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks, David. Good to hear from you. 13 minutes past 12 on Mannin Line, and let's get to Mark's with us now. Hi, Mark.
All right, Andy, fella, how you doing?
Very well, thanks, yeah.
Good. Listen, this phone call between you and I now and the listening populace is basically going to be starting off as tongue-in-cheek, but however, it could end up being something quite different. Are you aware that the Russians sent a spy ship to spy on the Isle of Man last week?
I heard there was something sailing up and down the Irish Sea. Now, was that true?
Right, I will read you just a tiny little paragraph from the Daily Mail, which, let's face it, aren't the biggest fans of Russia. Right, on Thursday, the Yantar intelligence gathering ship was identified loitering near the Isle of Man with its position assessed to be directly above undersea energy cables linking Britain and Ireland. Now, what on earth have our government done to upset the Russians?
Well, it's funny. It's coincidental. I can tell you, you and I have not spoken about this before, have we?
Nope.
Okay, well, on Friday night, I was talking to somebody who was saying exactly the same thing. It was but it was also about our interconnector and also our gas pipe and also all the interconnectors in the UK. And they said, surely they have got to be, bearing in mind what somebody did to the Nord Stream gas pipe, they've got to be, surely somebody's got to be guarding these things, because if we're going to rely on green energy and interconnectors, all somebody's got to do to screw everything up is to blow up an interconnector.
Well, if you think about it, on the other way to look at it as well is if the Russians have been shouting, well, Putin's been shouting for ages, telling Britain to keep their noses out of what's going on in Ukraine. What's to stop him saying, right, well, okay, you're interfering in some of this, nothing to do with you. We're going to make a statement here, cut the cables directly above us, and we will be in a blackout for God knows how long. And that's proved a point that he can get to us, he can get to Britain just by cutting us off.
Well, everybody will know. I mean, anybody who's in the energy industry will know about our interconnector from just below us at Port Skillion to Bispham in Blackpool, and the gas pipeline, the T junction that we've got off the Bord gas pipeline between Scotland and Northern Ireland. And
exactly.
They are, I mean, without that, if somebody ruptures that gas pipe, Paul Rose may as well blow balloons up.
Exactly. You don't think for one single second the FSB, the old KGB in Russia don't know this, that we are solely reliant on other people. And if he wants to prove a point, if he wants to make a statement, we're going to go back into the dark ages for a good couple of months. I mean, it's a frightening thing to think about, especially coming up to the winter. But he's got form. It's like you say, that Nord thing. Everyone knows it was the Russians that did that. He hasn't denied it, but he's not admitted it. It's been he's basically saying, you think it's us, well, I'm happy for you to think it's us, because if you think it's us, we can get anybody, anytime, anywhere, and we would be the perfect little thing to make a statement over.
Well, it's we don't want to tempt fate over this, but the fact is that it will be nice to know if one of the spy organisations, the defence organisations, said, "Don't worry, we got a drone going up and down your gas pipe every week just to check that everything's okay." Because if they can put a drone down, somebody else can put a drone down with explosives on it.
Exactly, but can you imagine the scenario? You're looking out your bedroom window one day and you see half a dozen drones flying up and down the Irish Sea. You'd really think to yourself, what the hell have we got ourselves involved in now?
Well, I think we file under this, Mark. We file it all under margin for error. Exactly. And the fact is, margin for error is going to be really important in the future, because if we are putting all our eggs in this particular basket, what's the margin for error? What's the risk?
There is no margin for error, and the problem is, you see, we're only a tiny little island nation. We're reliant on bigger nations to protect us and look after us and provide us with stuff. And you don't think for one second that Putin doesn't know this. He will know before we've been told what we're expecting next. I bet he even knows all about these wind turbines before anybody else knows about them.
Well, remember, we pay the UK for our defence. We make a positive contribution. So our defence is bought and paid for, so surely we need to know the measure of that defence.
Exactly. It needs the British government. The British government, they've been tracking this Yantar up and down the English Channel, up and down the Irish Sea and into the North Sea. The Norwegians have been tracking it too. It would be nice for someone in the British government to say, look, you've got nothing to worry about. We're tracking it. If it launches their mini submarine, we're going to snatch it. You're fine. Don't worry about it. But for the British government not to say anything, I also think Alf Cannon needs to get onto his counterpart and say exactly how worried should we be on the Isle of Man about this?
Okay, all right. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for frightening the life out of us, Mark.
You're more than welcome, my friend. Have a good day.
Good to hear from you. Thanks. This is the Russian research vessel called the Yantar, Yantar, a special purpose intelligence collection ship built for the Russian Navy that was spotted zooming up and down the Irish Sea. Now, we've got an electric interconnector and a gas interconnector. The gas interconnector is for our natural gas. Of course, primarily it's for Pulrose Power Station. Now, the Yantar, I don't want to frighten you, but the Yantar can act as a mothership for mini-submarines. The submersibles are more than able to sever cables miles below the ocean's surface. The submersibles can operate at depths of up to 20,000 feet. The submersibles can also project other submersibles as well. So this Yantar is... I wonder if it's been near the Channel Islands. Has anybody told them? Tony's on now. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Andy. How you doing?
Well, I'm a little less content than I was a few minutes ago thinking about that research vessel.
Well, you keep prodding the Russian bear. What do you expect? What I was calling for was the wonderful new website that the Steam Packet has managed to launch, which doesn't really give us any information unless you go through 15 different pages to try and see what's going on. So my question is, why have they changed the website?
I'll be honest with you. I mean, I don't very often pass an opinion, but I don't like the new website. It's a bit kind of open air for me. The other one was very compact, and you knew what was what. But so they've obviously paid to have a new website, but well, it'll take some getting used to.
Well, I think it will never get used to it because what it does is it hides what they're doing. And once again, we have a situation where there's going to be a 40 mile an hour east-northeast wind, which is going to stop the boat sailing because it can't get into Heysham because it's got so much windage on it. And I keep coming back to it. When are they going to admit this is the wrong boat for the Irish Sea and for climate change? When are they going to do it? Say, well, we've got something wrong here. We need to do something about this. Because what we're doing is heading towards winter, and it is not going to get better. This is going to get worse. And if we get worse weather, which we keep getting told we're going to have worse weather because we're all burning too much fossil fuel, of course, it's nothing to do with the Chinese, the Indians, the Russians, or the Americans. It's all us. We're causing climate change individually in the Isle of Man, and we need to do something about it. Because of that, we're in a situation where if your internet connector goes, in either case, what are we going to do? Where are we going to get this electricity from? We're going to be going down and buying batteries? Have any of the climate change people even thought about this?
I just wonder whether they've talked to the people who operate the gambling companies, the offshore, the e-gaming companies, on which our economy is very reliant. I just wonder how long the e-gaming companies would be here if the electricity supply was a little intermittent, shall we say.
I know what they do. They just buy a diesel generator. Because the diesel comes in by ship. So unless you actually attack a piece of shipping, you can't disrupt that. So you come back to the same thing. Have we got any diesel-powered generators in the Isle of Man so we can keep the lights on? Instead of running around saying, well, we've got to go green, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll put a wind farm up. If the wind don't blow, we've got no electricity, and there is no strength within the system. There's no rigidity. You can't alter anything because we're stuck with it. And I just start to give up with Alf. Alf is supposed to be intelligent, but he's letting all this go because he's got other things on his mind, I guess. I don't know. But the whole of the government is just a waste of space. Treasury Minister the other day said we've got the same system as the UK for our pensions. That's totally untrue. The Isle of Man has a pension fund. The UK does not. All of their pensions are paid out of tax receipts, whereas ours are paid out of the fund. And the reason the fund keeps going down is because we keep employing people on much higher salaries on gold-plated pensions, MHKs included, who had a 35-40% pay rise 3 years ago, and all their extras, of course. And we've got loads of people within the system who are earning massive amounts of money, and earning that money will get them to a gold-plated pension, which is coming out of the fund.
Well, let's just say that the people who were governing the system, people who were administering the system 10, 20-odd years ago, were too optimistic. So how do we rectify their optimism now we're in tough times?
Well, the first thing would be is all of the government, and that includes all the civil servants, have to go on a defined benefit scheme where they don't get a gold-plated pension. And I don't condone this rubbish that, we contribute to it, but they don't contribute to it in the future when they stop work, do they? And that's going to get worse, not better. So what we need to do is immediately say all of the MHKs, every one of them, have to pay 60% tax or 20% tax, a higher tax level anyway, which goes into the pension fund because they're earning more money, so their pension is going to be colossal. That would immediately cut your problem that you're going to have in the future because we're going to be funding those pensions long term.
And would that apply to senior civil servants as well?
Yeah, anybody who earns... I say, have a look at the numbers. If you ask the Treasury who's earning what, they'll tell you they don't know because they are part of the problem. How many people in Treasury are employed earning over £100,000? I don't know, and I bet you don't. But I bet if you ask a Freedom of Information on how many people in actual government who are in the civil service who are earning over £100,000, you'll be shocked at how many it is. And I mean 100,000 gross, not net. And then you can include all the people that Manx Care are paying an arm and a leg to, who are consultants. The hospital is full of consultants who are actually self-employed with companies elsewhere who are being brought in by Manx Care to fix things, but are not fixing things. They're just making lots of money out of us because they're not fixing anything. The government is just part of the problem. When MHKs were paid 30 and 40,000, they were in the tax bracket with the rest of us. Now they've put themselves in a position of earning a massive amount of money. They didn't fix their problem of how we're going to pay for that in the future on their retirement benefits.
So how do you, part of the reason that MHKs, and they're now attached to the civil service spine, aren't they? Mm-hmm. So they go up on the civil service spine. But the reason that they started paying MHKs, let's just say a living wage, was because they didn't, the thinking was at the time, you didn't only want rich businessmen, it was mainly men, who could afford to take an MHK as a second job. So because it didn't pay that very much. So you only got people who could afford to do the job as well as their main job. So they wanted to then rectify that and make it so that anybody could earn a decent living being an MHK.
I don't know how much you're paid, Andy, but I think a decent living at £100,000 gross a year at 22% interest off your tax. That's milking the system, that is. I think that's not a living wage. A living wage in the Isle of Man is 50,000 quid,
right? In
my opinion. If you earn 50,000 a year, you can afford to pay your taxes, you can afford at some stage to buy a house, you can afford to run a car. Well, at the moment, I don't know how it'll be in the future, but at the moment. But £100,000, and especially a gold-plated pension on top of it, is a joke. And if you want people who are willing to do this for a living wage, it shouldn't be £100,000. And I would ask, how many people in civil service positions within the government, I'm talking about Treasury and all that, how many of those are on also higher salaries than £100,000? Because I guarantee there are a few.
Okay, all right, Tony.
I'm not being funny, Andy. I'm all for people having a living wage and be able to get forward. But we've been put in this position because the government is part of the problem. They're part of the problem because they are benefiting from what they're doing. And we're stuck with the end result. Oh, we'll put 2% tax on everybody who can't afford it. That's not managing the system.
Okay, all right.
That's just disgraceful.
All right, appreciate it, Tony. Thanks for calling today. And Peter's with us now. Hi, Peter.
Oh, hello, Andy. It's Peter Murcott here. I've just listened to those other two contributions, and there's some very significant things raised. Makes me almost wish I was raising something different, especially the first one about the Russian ships going through the Irish Sea. I can't resist just making one comment on that, but I'll then tell you what I was ringing about. Reading in the paper today that President Biden has now apparently authorized the firing of missiles of a certain type into Russia now. I have grave reservations about the wisdom of that. I think they might reflect on the fact that every time you ramp up this conflict, then it gets ramped up on the other side. And I would be very concerned. You've had a very interesting call this morning. Who knows how it might be ramped up on the other side? So I was doubtful about the wisdom of President Biden doing that. Very, very doubtful indeed. And I just hope that he hasn't made another major mistake. But there we are. But I rang to say, and I share your concern about feeling very uncomfortable about what the situation is around the seas. And I think I think that call was extraordinarily useful to the nation to help us to get into perspective some of the other things that seem to exercise people's minds. But you had a call I responded to a call some time ago about the foreshore, you remember?
Yes. It was taking rocks and pebbles, wasn't it?
That's right. And I suggested I did say that in the UK, the Crown owned it, and I wasn't sure about the Isle of Man, but I assumed it was the same. It used to be the same. Since then, my knowledge has increased on this subject, thanks to a kind intervention of someone who gave me some interesting facts. The foreshore was once owned by the Crown in the Isle of Man, but in 1947, the Manx government bought not only that, but evidently some aspects to do with forestry and some internal parts of the Isle of Man, and also the territorial waters. And so they, in those days, went as far as 3 miles. I think this was consolidated in an Act of 1950. And then, of course, about 1993, it's within living memory now, when they extended the waters to 12 miles, or they bought certain rights of the seas around the Isle of Man. So the answer is, it is now owned by the Manx government. Which part of government actually administers it, I'm not sure. Somebody's made a guess. It might be the Department of Infrastructure, but that I don't know for fact. But to answer the question, it is owned by the island and not by the Crown anymore.
And this was 1947, you say?
Yes, I think it was 1947, and they bought it. They were offered it, and they bought it out. And they were also at that particular time buying Ronaldsway Airport, because that was owned by Britain at one time, and also Derby. They bought that out as well.
Yes,
in that period. So that's really just to. But all the other points that I made, I think, would be valid. You know, when I said, I don't think you can take a big lorry and just go and load up stone. If you take a few little pebbles in a bucket, like kids have done, and I did myself when I was a child, I don't think that's going to come under the fact of triviality. But you can't just go and load up large amounts of sand, I wouldn't have thought, and use it for various industrial purposes or building purposes.
Okay.
The other thing I was just going to say to you was one thing that concerns me greatly, and I'd be very interested if somebody has got the answer on this one. You had the Chief Constable on, and I think I didn't listen to all of it, but I think somebody raised the question about cycling on the pavement. And the Chief Constable, if I remember rightly, ventured that he certainly seemed to be unsure as to whether there was a law against that.
Yes.
I feel the Chief Constable is quite right. I'm equally unsure as well. I've done some research on it. I had been told that it was covered by the Highways Act 1985. Now, I've been down to the Tynwald this morning and read the Act, and it does not cover cycling on the pavement. It talks about reckless cycling, and it talks about dangerous cycling, such as would be dangerous in the eyes of a reasonably competent cyclist and so on. But all that refers to the road, and I have seen one or two examples of dangerous cycling on the road. But the pavement, there was a question, I believe, again, and I've done some research on this, there was a question in the Keys in 2021 about cycling on the pavement, and the answer ventured to say, but did not give chapter and verse, that it was illegal. However, chapter and verse was not given, and I've been to make inquiries, and I'm in the process still of inquiring, but looking at it insofar as I've got, it does not appear to have a specific offence about it. Now, this is extremely worrying, because coming into town today, a cyclist without warning whizzed past me. And what made it extremely dangerous was the fact that I was walking along the Peel Road. All the way along, I was just trying to cross, and of course it's rather wide at that point, and I concluded that there was too much traffic and I'd have to walk well into town. However, the way the cyclist went past on my left-hand side, he would not have known before, if he'd have been coming earlier, that I was just about to turn to look at the traffic. Now, as you know, I'm against the assisted dying bill, and I'm also against what might be the assistance to killing me off rather early by people who just come along without warning and go past at considerable speed, probably 15, 20 miles an hour, and would be enough to kill you off.
Is there a bylaw? I mean, I'm having multiple memories here, but I'm sure I've spoken to a Douglas councillor who said that there's a bylaw in Douglas.
There is a bylaw about the Strand and in Douglas, yes. The problem is, when I made inquiries on that some years ago, the answer I got from the person was that I don't think they got the resources at that point. If I'm correct, they hadn't got the resources to enforce it. One of the problems with when that arises is, unfortunately, it brings the law into disrepute, because people quite regularly on a Saturday, very dangerously, cycle through the Strand, and again, every single week, somebody's life is being taken into their hands. Because if you get hit by a bike, the chances are it will kill you by the force. I can tell you what it's like. The other day, not too long ago, I was walking my wife down, and we just slipped. My wife slipped, and actually I fell over as well. And it's not a pleasant experience when you fall down onto the pavement and hit your head on the pavement. Now, fortunately, it wasn't a fall at great force, if you know what I mean. If a cyclist hits you, you will go down on the pavement at great force, and the likelihood is it will kill you, or it'll do you serious harm. The only piece of law that I think could possibly be used, but I'm not really in favour of straining laws to cover unlikely situations that probably it was not designed to do, is probably the law of harassment, because it could be argued quite cogently that when they whiz past you, they do cause you alarm, which of course is part of the law of harassment. The problem with that is twofold. First of all, I think the harassment law requires 2 occurrences, so you'd be in problems there. And the second thing, of course, always is it's very, very difficult. I mean, when the person cycled on, I mean, how would you know who it was anyway? So I think a concerted campaign is needed to establish quite definitively, is there a piece of law in the island? And I would agree with the Chief Constable, I don't think there is, to cover cycling on the pavement from my researches, and to make it a priority to address this, because somebody, somewhere, very soon, if we don't do anything about it, is going to be either seriously injured or killed, and I'm not quite ready to go to heaven just yet.
Okay. All right. Appreciate it, Peter. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good to hear from you. That's a very valid point, and one. So there is a bylaw in Douglas, but no law against cycling on the pavement. I thought it was always accepted that you weren't allowed to cycle on the pavement. It was against the law to cycle on the pavement. It would be nice to know, wouldn't it? And Peter's right. If a cyclist hits you with any force, bearing in mind that vehicles have now been designed to be very safe. They don't have any spiky edges. They don't have any hard edges. And they don't have wing mirrors sticking out or mascots on the front anymore. But bikes are spiky. They have things sticking out. One of those catches you, you could be in trouble. If you know the answer to this, I'd really appreciate it. Could you find out what's happened? James dropped me a note. Could you find out what's happened to the flights from the Isle of Man to Ireland? Why is no politician questioning what's going on? No flights whatsoever to Belfast, and now flights to Dublin cut to 4 flights a week from the Isle of Man. It's impossible to get away for the weekend in that return flights from Dublin have moved to the morning. What's going on? This government's truly the worst ever, says James. Flights drop, banks close, businesses struggling, and they do nothing. After Mannin Line today, it's our 60th anniversary. We're back into the archive again, and this is interesting today. We're hearing some archive audio from Manx Radio and Radio South Africa, Radio RSA, the international broadcaster for the Republic of South Africa. It's from it's a link up with Peter Kneale talking to the presenter Guy Blackmore to broadcast a message from the Isle of Man to South Africa. And interesting, Guy Blackmore was in the 1960s on board Radio Caroline. He was called Jimmy Gordon, Jumbo Jimmy Gordon. And when he left Radio Caroline, they all had assumed names, I think, to get around the fact they may be prosecuted. But Jim Gordon became Guy Blackmore, went to work for the BBC in Britain and then to South Africa. And you'll hear him and Peter Kneale after Mannin Line today.
The Mannin Line, daily interaction, debate and exchange of ideas. Broadcast on Manx Radio.
Meet Jane.
When Dad began forgetting the little things, we knew we needed help. Mam Benham walked us through every step.
Real stories, real solutions. Secure tomorrow today with Man Benham.
Waltons have hundreds of TVs in stock ready to go, from Samsung to LG, here on the island. Plus, a large range of main appliances in stock, including fridge freezers, washing machines, and everything your home will need from all the top brands like Smeg, Samsung, and Hotpoint. With special offers throughout the store and delivery and installation available, check out Waltons on Facebook or waltons.im. Or, even better, visit Waltons in Isle of Man Business Park, opposite Robinson's, for great prices and great service.
Whether starting a new business or building up your existing business, come and talk to the accounts and tax experts at Nicola Bowker & Co. With their holistic approach to business advice, Nicola Bowker & Co. will work with you to achieve success. For accounts that work, call 861 271.
Deck the halls with boughs of holly and much more when you visit Watson's Nurseries this Christmas. Watson's Nurseries for cut and potted Christmas trees, including non-drop at great prices, along with decorative festive wreaths and superb gift ideas like trees, fruit trees, large specimen trees and shrubs, and gift vouchers. They also stock logs and coals suitable for fires or wood-burning stoves, with delivery available. Call 801 812. Find something festive at Watson's Nurseries, Greba, on the Peel side of Hawthorne Inn.
This Tuesday here on Manx Radio at 5:30, join Kiri Kermode and myself, Simon Clark, for Countryside. I congratulate Lee Morris, CEO of the Manx Wildlife Trust, and some of the volunteers on their recent King's Award for volunteers. And Kiri Talks Flowers, speaks to the winners and committee members from the Isle of Man Chrysanthemum Society show.
That's all in Countryside, Tuesday here on Manx Radio at 5:30. And don't forget, you can download and subscribe to the podcast for free at manxradio.com.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Mike's on now. Hi, Mike.
Hello there, Andy. First of all, I can answer a few questions or points that Tony brought up. The main one is, can we generate electricity? We've still got 9 diesel generators, to my knowledge.
Right.
We've got 5 in Douglas and 4 in Peel. Now, I know there's been a lot of people wanting the Peel ones to be gone, basically. They don't run very often. Didn't happen last winter, but mostly in the winter they were on what they call a triad system, where if the UK was short, they had an hour in which to be exporting a certain amount of electricity. And if they did it, it was good money. They got fined if they were late. And it normally happened, say, between, say, 5 and 7, when everybody in England's gone home, cooking a dinner, etc.
Okay.
So we've got those, and we need to keep them. They don't run on the old black oil that they used to, so they run on your standard diesel. So it's not as bad emissions as they used to be when they were first installed. So we have got that facility, so long as the bean counters don't say, let's get rid of them. Basically, it was all about the civil service, etc. And everything. Yeah. To my knowledge, a civil servant, given the name, is a servant of the people. Now, they're allowed, obviously, to have their own agendas. And before I go too far, I know some very good people in government. I've worked with them, and I've also come across a few that are just going in, collecting the money and waiting for retirement. But there are some very good people working in government. And the same with the politicians. The politicians are there to do the best for the population who's elected them. So that is their main job. So even though they may have their own personal opinions, there do come times where they will have to put the country first and maybe not vote for what they believe in, but what is best for the country.
Yeah.
Now, I believe it's £40 million we've invested in the climate change rubbish.
40 plus, yes.
Right. As I've said before, the UK is 2% of the world's pollution on that sort of scale, of which, and it includes the Isle of Man, so our contribution to climate change, if you believe that we've caused it, and I'm one of those people who believes it's a natural cycle, if you look back through all history, etc., that is not in the interest of the people. There should not be spending any of this money. I know they've said that there's a law, it's been passed as a law. Laws can be revoked. We should just say, right, that's it, we're not doing it, and put the money into health service, whatever. When the hospital was built, if I remember from correct, the pension fund was raided to build it, and it's never been paid back. The power station was built, and they cost a lot more, and they spent a load of money on architectural stuff, etc. That has never been repaid. We're paying for that. That's part of the reason they've amalgamated the MEA with, like, the water board, etc.
Well, this comes back to what I mentioned a moment ago, the fact that, you remember 25 years ago, the Isle of Man was absolutely rocking. You couldn't move for money on the Isle of Man. We had all that infrastructure work. We had Iris, the power station, the incinerator, the hospital. Everything was going gung-ho. And I think presumably everybody thought that would go on forever.
Well, I don't actually quite remember 25. I moved here 2001, and I worked on a lot of those projects. So, yeah, there was a lot of money. We had the problem with the VAT calculation, which had been set by the UK, from my knowledge. So, all right, yes, we were getting a good deal, but it was their fault. And then they very quickly changed the calculation, and we lost a lot of money. Or rather, we didn't get as much money as we were previously.
Yeah.
But it all comes back to the fact that we are spending huge amounts of money on something that will make absolutely no difference, apart from we can say, oh, look what we're doing, and the rest of the world doesn't care.
Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate that point. I've got to dash on, but I do appreciate your point. Thanks for calling today.
Cheers.
Good to hear from you. It's 11 minutes to 1. I've got lots of messages to get through, and I'll try and do it before we finish at 1. I don't know if you're aware, says Chris in the north, RAF Poseidon's MRA-1 aircraft was circling the Isle of Man for 5 hours, maybe in connection with the Russian ship. Andy tells me regarding the Russian boat, the US Navy ship Bruce Heason, looking at the marine traffic website, is showing currently being halfway between Derby Head and Port of Voggie, guarding the gas pipeline. Also at present there's a US vessel, says Peter, sitting over the pipeline about 10 miles off Balaf, and it's been there for 2 days. You can see it on AIS. And Graham tells me the US warship anchored mid-channel between Derby and Northern Ireland for the last 3 weeks. what is going on.
Sorrel has a special Christmas gift just for you. For the first time ever, there's a discount on our famous candle and perfume making workshops. Book a workshop with family or friends and use the code CHRISTMAS. Discount also applies to vouchers that you can gift to someone special. Don't miss this limited offer. Spaces are filling fast. Book now at sorrel.im to secure your spot and experience the magic of Sorrel this holiday season. Use code CHRISTMAS at the checkout. Merry Christmas from all of us at Sorrel.
Find stunning Christmas gifts at Ramsey Art Gallery, jewellers and engravers.
With beautiful artwork, including prints and original paintings.
There's gold and silver jewellery and watches from Citizen, Bolivar and Storm.
Plus Seconda, Accurist and Timex. Includes free lifetime watch bracelet adjustment with purchase.
Make gifts extra personal with an engraved message. Or if you find it hard to choose, then a gift voucher is the perfect answer.
Get Christmas all wrapped up at Ramsey Art Gallery or see ramseyartgallery.com.
Oh, blowing a hoolie out there.
Come in for a Bravig by the fire. Just stocked up at Hearth. Never been so warm.
Who's that? Hearth?
Aye, they've got kiln-dried hardwood for me log burner, Colombian coal and smokeless ovals for the open fire, kindling and firelighters all delivered. Great value too.
All goes up the chimney anyway, so I pay more. I'll be giving Hearth a call.
Check their website as well. Just order and they deliver.
For all your fire fuel needs, call Hearth on 560 577 or visit hearth.co.com.
Walk through the Christmas wonderland at Ramsey Garden Centre for a magical range of trees, decorations, unique gifts and much more, including the widest range of indoor and outdoor lights. Christmas at Ramsey Garden Centre, open 7 days a week.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Thank you, 051. Isle of Man Highway Code Rule 64, you must not cycle on a pavement, says Peter. So that's in the Highway Code. Bonzo's on now. Hi, Bonzo.
Hello, yes, just very quickly on the old Russian spy ship. It was also shadowed by a Royal Navy frigate, HMS Iron Duke. The Poseidon aeroplane, they cost about 200 million quid or more. They're kind of based on a 737 airliner, but they're packed to the gunwales with the most sophisticated electronic stuff you'll find. And so if it was putting something over the back to go around looking over pipeworks and cables and things, then the Poseidon and HMS Iron Duke would know about it.
So, I mean, do you think that the Yantar, I mean, I know I've looked into it, the Yantar's been here, there and everywhere, been in the Eastern Mediterranean, was off South America a while back, so is she just one of a jobbing spy ship by the look of it?
Oh, no, much more than that, because, of course, of all its submersibles, its ROVs that can go deep and very deep and do things. And, indeed, it was stooging off Land's End, I think, a couple of days ago, which is, of course, where all the major telecommunications, transatlantic telecommunications cables come ashore. So, slightly worrying. I think the big question for us, though, is did it enter Manx territorial seas?
Well, it depends whether they turned off their GPS, doesn't it? We'd only know if they got that.
Well, the Iron Duke and the Poseidon were shadowing it, so they'll know if it did or not.
And what do you think we should do if she did?
Well, I think it would be then for Isle of Man government to chat to UK and to get them to deliver a letter of protest to the Russian ambassador.
Okay. All right. Bonzo, we appreciate it. Thanks for calling today.
Okay, then. Cheers.
Never thought I'd be talking about Russian spy ships. This ship, by the way, the Yantar, was escorted out of the Irish Sea by the Irish offshore patrol vessel, the James Joyce, beneath the area of the sea southwest of the Isle of Man and east of Dublin. Now, it may not be us, but there are cables carrying data for Microsoft and Google. Do you remember? It was that cable that went from Denmark to Ireland and was off Fleshick Bay a couple of years ago. That's the cable. Microsoft and Google. The plot thickens. That's it. Back tomorrow with another open line on Manx Radio. Text, email and call on WhatsApp. And thanks to Chris on the phones today. Enjoy your Monday.
WINT
60 years serving you as the nation's station. This is Manx Radio.
Today's Isle of Man has thousands of people resident here who have come from South Africa. That's been a largely recent development, encouraged by the government. But on other occasions, South Africans have made a beeline for us, including some extraordinary sportsmen. At the start of its broadcasting journey, 60 years ago, the station used every opportunity to make its presence felt in other parts of the world, including, of course, South Africa. Here's an example.
Hi there, people. This is Guy Blackmore saying welcome aboard the Sugus Globe Probe. Every Tuesday at 5 o'clock, the Mystic Probe settles on the pop music charts of 2 countries, somewhere in the world.
And this time, first time, Belgium. And then we've got a taped message from the boss of Britain's only commercial radio station. And finally to the home of Mardi Gras, Brazil. But first, friends, get ready for this.
Open your mouth and shut your eyes, and right away you'll recognize Sugus, 'cause they're the fruitiest.
We're back on board the Globe Probe, this time heading up to the Isle of Man in the Irish Sea, where we've got for you a message on tape from Peter Kneale, who is the manager of the station, and he's got another hobby. Listen to this.
Hi there, this is Peter Kneale on Manx Radio in the wonderful Isle of Man in the Irish Sea, saying hi there to Guy and all the wonderful listeners of Springbok Radio in South Africa. Well, I'm sitting at the moment in one of my favourite vantage points, the commentary box at the TT Grandstand, start of the world-famous TT races. And it's from here that I direct the Manx Radio commentaries live every year on these thrilling races. Now, many of you will have heard about these races and the renowned 37 3/4 mile circuit, believed to be one of the toughest in the world, and over the years I've certainly seen some splendid sights, and some of the world's top riders fighting it out for coveted honours. One of the most famous riders was in fact a South African, Jim Redman, who for 3 years running won both the 250 and 350cc events just a few years ago. And not only was he a great rider, he proved himself a wonderful sportsman too. Perhaps someday you'll be able to see the TT races when you visit our lovely island. I'm certain, like me, you'd really enjoy them. So on that note, I'll close down transmissions by wishing you all the very best, lots of luck, and maybe someday in the not-too-distant future, I'll be saying hi there in person. So goodbye and good luck to all of you listening from Peter Kneale in the wonderful Isle of Man.
Part of island life for 60 years. This is your Manx Radio.